Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of Influential Entrepreneurs. This is Mike Saunders, the Authority Positioning Coach. Today we have with us Wani Iris Manly, who is a corporate business and trademark law attorney, an international speaker, consultant, and two-time best-selling author. Wani, welcome to the program.
Hi, Mike. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I'm excited to talk about your work and what you do and how you support entrepreneurs. But give us a little bit of your background and what led you to law and focusing on trademark law specifically.
Well, I think it's like a family pedigree. My parents are from Liberia in West Africa, and my father was a former minister of finance. And so I lived this life of diplomatic life and just kind of following in my father's footsteps in a different way, just going towards the law route. And when I was in law school, I really loved trademarks and contracts. In fact, my trademark professor actually worked for Coca-Cola, and her classes were one of the most interesting classes. And so I just actually love putting deals together. And so for me, when I came into private practice for myself, that's what I chose to focus my business, my practice on, and then now it's actually more helping entrepreneurs as opposed to working with corporate, which is what I used to do primarily.
And so you kind of had that little flavor growing up, kind of like if your parents were doctors, you would probably feel like, well, medicine is for me. So you kind of had that family heritage, as you mentioned. What is it that when you were thinking about trademark law specifically, what is it that gets you excited about that? Because there are so many facets of law that you could have focused on, corporate law and things like that. But what about trademark that is exciting?
Well, I'm an entrepreneur myself as well, too. And so, one of the things that I really love to impart on to everyone that I talk to is like when you have a business, you're not just building a business, you're building a brand. And so you actually have to protect that, from your imagery to your name to how protecting your content. And to me, all of that just really excites me. Whenever I look at a company, I look at how they market themselves. Like, for example, Apple with the simplicity, with the synergy of how all their products work. And so for me, it's like a business to me is not really complete unless you're really incorporating all those other aspects, which is like your intellectual property, your intangibles. And so for me, I just get turned on by it, really.
Neat. That's awesome. So what are some things that you find entrepreneurs needing that they don't really need? Because in psychology, there's that, I'm sure there's a title for this, but I always remember it as you don't know what you don't know. And what are some things that entrepreneurs don't know about, trademarks and intellectual property, things like that they really need to be aware of?
Well, they don't really recognize, first of all, they don't really value all of their intellectual property, And I always tell people or entrepreneurs that, before you even think about calling someone like myself or any other attorney to say, hey, I want to come and trademark this brand or this logo, first of all, take an inventory or an audit of all of your trade secrets, right? It's like, how do you transform your customers, or why are people coming to you and saying, hey, Mike, please help me out. Like, what are you constantly hearing about? So number one, take account to really what is your intellectual property. So I think that people really underestimate their value within themselves and what they actually offer. And so when they're coming to trademark, it's just a big given name. I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's the name, it's your process, it's your transformation. The second thing is entrepreneurs don't really look to especially like now we're all, doing social media, right? So where we're putting all of our content out there, it's like there's other people that are actually protecting their content. For example, there's a very misnomer in the law where people think that just as long as once you publish you put anything out there, you publish your story or your article, it is your copyright, but it's not protected in the sense of like if someone actually would take into actually using it, you could not go to court and actually sue them. In order to actually have copyright infringement, What gets you into court is actually a fellow registration. So there's a lot of like misnomers out there when it comes to intellectual property and trademark. And so those are the big things. And then you also have on the trademark end is that people thinking they can just trademark anything, or they can just trademark like their name, you know. First and foremost, like in order to have a trademark, there has to become commercialization to it. Like you just can't, hey, I like this name, just kind of keep it, not really be doing anything to put it in interstate commerce. So it's like the top gist that I actually see, you know, within the business world and entrepreneur world.
So it makes me think of a question then. You can't just trademark some idea unless it's already like being, I guess, in commerce, right? Am I correct in thinking that like I can't just have this name or this thing that I'm thinking of in out of thin air and go, let's trademark it because there's no substance yet. It's not out there. Well, then how do you balance that to how soon do you get it out there before you work on a trademark? Because now someone might see it and now it's lost, you know? So where's that balance?
Well, actually, that's not. It's just back up to the very beginning. You don't have to. So when you file a trademark application, there's two avenues you can actually do it. You can file it as the mark has already been in interstate commerce and is already in use. Or you can also file an intent to use application, right? And so that means the mark is not out there, but you actually are thinking about putting it into interstate commerce. And the way it works that, you know, by the time you submit your application and by the time you actually get to the finish line of where it's about to be, you know, you're about to be granted that certification, within that time frame, you must, by that time, actually then put it into the commercial market to be trying to sell it, because at that point you have to produce a substance, you know, indicating that. In terms of actually when to protect, I always say it depends on how strongly are you connected to, and do you know, like, this is going to be like your legacy brand. I'll give you an example. For like, you know, for me with my newest business, Where Inspiration Meets Law, and what you talk about, when I got the download for that, instantly I woke up the next morning, I was online, I looked to see if the domain was available, I bought it. I then looked at the trademark office to see whether the name was taken. It was available. I then trademarked it. I'm sorry. I went to the Department of Corporations in Florida where the corporation's licensed. The name was available. I formed a corporation. Then did a trademark search on it because I know that I'm not changing this name. Like, I'm committed to it for 1,000 years after I'm gone. I want this to carry on. So if you have that conviction with the name or with the brand, then you just go ahead and trademark it right away. However, if you're floundering, you're not really quite sure about something, and this is like a very intuitive thing. Like you'll be able to know after, okay, am I really committed to this, or am I going to be changing my mind 6 months later? If you're going to be changing your mind, then I will still wait on it, and at the same time, do not promote it unless like you're very quite sure about it.
Yeah, and I think from what you're saying there, maybe my impression was like the process is a lot faster than you think. But if I'm correct, by the time you search or file, it's not something where when you push the button, poof, you're already trademarked. It's quite a process. So it gives you then the time to then file and then go out there and get it in commerce or out there online and things. So then by the time that maybe the eyeballs are looking at your application, then they see, oh yeah, I see that you're doing this with it or whatnot.
Exactly, and then also too, you know, it is the U.S. process is actually quite the lengthiest. It takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months. It's just because of the sheer volume of the applications that come to the U.S. and especially now because everyone is, you know, operating on, you know, electronically because of COVID, right? Yeah. And so there's a super increase, or highest increase of, you know, of applications, you know, at the trademark office. And so, but no matter what, once you file your application, like you right away you're given a receipt with a serial number. And the thing about the U.S. is that you're deemed from that moment on the owner of the trademark. So, for example, as you're going through the process, no matter however long that actually takes, if somebody else comes through and tries to, you know, trademark a similar name or something or a logo that would give a likelihood of confusion to the consumer, they would actually be stopped. Like they wouldn't be able to. So that's the great thing. So yeah, even though it takes like time, you're still there. You're protected. So, you know, there's no I would say there's no penalty for actually filing, you know, right away. Like for example, the Spanx entrepreneur, Sarah Blakely, I don't know if you ever heard her story, but she literally, like, when she came up with the idea of Spanx, for an entire year, she was doing all the groundwork. She filed out the patent, the trademark for everything, and then a year later was when she actually released, her Spanx brand, and she's a multi-billionaire. So,
wow. Yeah, I remember on Shark Tank hearing her mention something to the effect of there were some challenges against her patents or whatnot, but I never heard, like the full-on story. So, I guess here's the thing. Entrepreneurs, coaches, business owners need to realize that there are things that they should be considering, and they're not attorneys and lawyers, so they need to then have someone on their team that can guide them.
Absolutely, and I would say that's probably the biggest mistakes that I see coaches, entrepreneurs, online business owners, creatives making the mistake of not getting a legal involved in a business from the very beginning at all, and thinking they can do it on their own and becoming like a Google lawyer.
Yep. Yeah. Like I mentioned medical a minute ago, but it's kind of like consulting Dr. Google. Well, there's no such thing as Dr. Google, but as soon as someone hears that they've got something, they're going to go Google around, and that's just a rabbit trail. That's not smart. Well, same with legal. You can't just Google it and go, hey, here's the answer. Well, you need someone that's competent. So that brings me then to a question. What are some things that entrepreneurs or business coaches need to be thinking about to use law to their advantage? Not looking at it like, ooh, it's this big negative thing that could, bring lawsuits, which, sure, anything like that can happen. But what are some ways that entrepreneurs can use it as leverage in a positive way?
Well, the first thing that needs to happen, I think, I am for entrepreneurs, is to change the mindset or the perception when it comes to legal and adopt more of a corporate viewpoint. Corporations know that legal is extremely valuable to their success, to their survival. So before a corporation hangs out that, we're open for business sign, the first person to come and see is someone like myself, an attorney, next is actually an accountant or CPA. They want to know, number one, how do I, what's the structure I need to actually be in in terms of saving taxes? And number two, tell me how to not get sued, right? And then if it's a CPA, it's all about the accounting work. So that was the first thing. And then entrepreneurs, on the other hand, sees legal. And so for corporations, for them, it's an expense. It's necessary. It's just an automatic expense or investment, right, for them. Whereas entrepreneurs see legal as an expense, as something that you don't do until something actually goes wrong, because they view legal to be very, very expensive, and they're not quite seeing like, hey, it's actually vital to your success. The first thing I would say is, number one, change your mindset about legal. And number two, get an attorney very, very involved in your business from the very, very beginning. Before you even put out an offer out there, go and talk to a lawyer that actually is well-versed in your type of industry and knows what the type of work you do, to look at your contract, to talk about your vision, and to actually guide you along the way. The thing is that when you start from the very, very beginning and you do it from a preventative measure where you have your contracts in place, you have the website legalized, you know exactly what to be saying. If you have a podcast, you need to be disclosing about the affiliate language and the SEC language, right? You get all this taken care of from the very beginning, so you don't wait until the very end where you don't do it all, or you try to or do it yourself, and at that point, when something goes wrong, it is very costly at that point. And I always also and people I find lawyering to be or legal to be very daunting or confused, and I'm like, it's not. Business owners should not be afraid to actually be coming to a lawyer and asking for legal advice. It's like we're actually on your side. And it's not something you need to do like every single week, right? It's like you do it as you grow. So in the very beginning, if you're just taking one-on-one clients, right, okay, at that point for you, most pertinent is your one-on-one client agreement. If you're running a group program as a coach, okay, at that point, it's your group terms of service. If you have a mastermind, make sure it's a mastermind agreement. So it's like if you do a podcast, right, then make sure you have your podcast guest release. You may be at that point wanting to open up a separate LLC for your podcast rather than connecting with your regular business. So it's like, you do this in parts and you just kind of keep it ongoing, and that way it just makes like a very smooth running of your business and actually helps you scale. And then you get the trademarks done, you get into licensing, growing and scaling and exposure and all of that. It really is, it behooves every, entrepreneur to be having attorneys with the whole process, like corporations do.
Yeah. I mean, if you're serious enough to start your business, you should be serious enough to make sure that everything is being done the right way. So that's really, really cool. Hey, so tell us a little bit about Inspiration Meets Law. What's that all about?
Where Inspiration Meets Law is literally it's a legal business for a legal consulting business for entrepreneurs, for coaches, and for creators, and to really get their legal house in order. What we do is we provide number one legal trainings and education seminars and webinars, and then we also provide legal templates and legal bundles that's specifically curated for each coaching niche. So there's a legal bundle that would have all your essential documents you would need as a business coach, as a consultant, as a photographer, as a love and relationship coach, as a energy healer, right? And so all the documents typically would have, like the standard package would be where you would have the documents, the legal for your website, the terms and conditions, the privacy policy links to the GDPR compliant, disclaimer specifically to your niche, your one-on-one client agreement, group and service agreement. So we just curated legal bundles for specific niches of coaches and also to consultants and other types of entrepreneurs and online businesses.
And that is your podcast, correct?
No, it's not a podcast. It's a website. It's an e-commerce website, and it's inspirationmeetslaw.com. And so that's all the legal templates are on there. We also do trademarks and copyrights. We also do other types of legal consulting. For example, I do legal reviews of an existing businesses. I can help, like right now we're in COVID world, right? So every contract that everybody has needs to be updated for COVID waivers, right? If you're in a place where you're able to do retreats and seminars and workshops, you need to be making sure you have the right and proper waivers, of liability for that. So we do coming into a company and we're like, okay, let's upgrade your legal panorama to really be in compliance, so you're kind of protecting yourself. And then the other part is just the educational part, where I do lots of trainings and webinars to coaching associations, to federations. I just finished one for the Canadian Association of Integrative Nutrition, where I did a webinar on how to build a legally successful a nutrition business, where I'm talking about the legal aspect of setting your company, talking about insurance, business, your contracts, and all that. Just educating, because this type of entrepreneurship, because with coaching, it's unregulated, right? And so you have everyone and anyone who's a coach that, with social media, is quite easy to access sort of a business, but then the legal structures and strategies are not there in place, and they actually get into trouble. Yeah.
Wow. I really like the sound of your website, inspirationmeetslaw.com. I'll make sure to put that in the show notes, because I know that any listener that's curious about what legal documents they should have for their business, then you could be that source for them. So other than that, what's the best way that people can reach out, learn more about what you do?
My personal website is Wani@WaniManly.com. But Facebook is where I am. It's my favorite hub, and so anybody can reach me there. Connect with me on Facebook. I get a ton of value in terms of, legal tips, advice, counsel, just to really help, entrepreneurs, consultants, and coaches and creatives, because, this is where we are right now, and everybody needs to have the legal in place. Otherwise, you're going to be building a castle on quicksand.
Yes, exactly. So we want to have our business built on a solid foundation, not quicksand. That's a great word picture. Well, Wani, thank you so much for coming on today. It was wonderful chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneurssradio.com.